Welcome back to the History of. On today's episode, we're looking into the history and origin of the Anglican Church, a story filled with power, rebellion, and faith. The Anglican Church was born in the 1500s when King Henry VIII broke away from Rome, not only for religious reasons, but also because he wanted control over marriage and power, much like when Israel demanded a king instead of trusting God in 1 Samuel 8:6-7. This split was more than politics. It reshaped Christianity, echoing Jesus' words in Matthew 12:25, "Every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined." Was this a bold move of freedom, or the start of division that still shapes Christianity today? Let's dive in. The story of the Anglican Church begins in the court of King Henry VIII, a monarch torn between loyalty to the Pope and his desire for a male heir. When his wife, Catherine of Aragon, failed to produce a son, Henry sought an annulment, but Pope Clement VII refused, partly because Catherine was the aunt of the powerful Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V. This political deadlock led Henry to take matters into his own hands, passing the Act of Supremacy, 1534, which declared him the supreme head of the Church of England. Suddenly, England was no longer under the Pope's authority. This break was not just about love and heirs, it was about power. By severing ties with Rome, Henry confiscated monasteries and church lands, greatly enriching the crown. Overnight, England went from being a Catholic stronghold to being under royal control. To many, this echoed the rebellion of Israel against foreign domination in the Old Testament, 1 Samuel 8:7, where the people demanded their own king instead of being ruled through outside authority. Interestingly, Henry never wanted to become a Protestant. He remained theologically Catholic in belief, even defending the 7 sacraments and persecuting reformers. In fact, he was once given the title Defender of the Faith by the Pope for attacking Martin Luther's writings. This meant that the early Anglican Church was not truly Protestant, it was Catholicism without the Pope. The English people, however, were caught in the middle. Many still prayed the rosary, went to confession, and revered saints, even though loyalty to Rome was now considered treason. Henry's actions created a religious identity crisis. Was England still Catholic, or was it something new? That question would not be settled for decades. Just as Israel wrestled between worshipping Yahweh and bowing to Baal, 1 Kings 18:21, England wrestled between old loyalties to Rome and new obedience to their king. This fracture set the stage for the rise of a distinctly English Christianity, which would later become the Anglican Church. Although Henry VIII had broken from the Pope, true Protestant ideas seeped into England through underground networks. Smuggled copies of William Tyndale's English Bible were secretly read in homes and taverns, much like the early Christians who gathered in secret catacombs, Acts 2:07-8. Tyndale's translation enraged Catholic authorities, but it gave ordinary believers access to Scripture for the first time in their own language. Henry resisted full Protestant reform, but after his death, his son Edward VI, guided by Protestant advisors, ushered in sweeping changes. The Mass was replaced with a simpler service in English, priests could marry, and images of saints were destroyed in churches. These reforms mirrored Martin Luther's teachings on justification by faith, Romans 3:28, challenging the Catholic system of works and indulgences. But not everyone welcomed the changes. Many in rural England clung to traditional Catholic worship. The Pilgrimage of Grace, 1536, saw tens of thousands of peasants rise in rebellion against the suppression of monasteries. The Reformation in England was not smooth. It was a battle between the old faith and the new gospel. One lesser-known detail is that even Henry VIII himself once owned a copy of Tyndale's translation, though he publicly condemned it. The hunger for scripture in the common tongue could not be stopped. By 1539, the Great Bible was authorized for public use, chained to pulpits so anyone could read it aloud in English. This stage of the English Reformation left England divided. Some wanted to remain loyal to Rome, others embraced Protestant theology, and still others desired a middle way. The tug of war over England's soul was just beginning, and it would reach a climax under Elizabeth I. When Queen Elizabeth I ascended the throne in 1558, England was exhausted from years of religious chaos. Her half-brother Edward VI had swung England towards radical Protestantism. Her half-sister, Mary, and Bloody Mary, violently restored Catholicism, executing hundreds of Protestants. Elizabeth inherited a nation torn apart, and she knew survival depended on balance. She crafted the Elizabethan settlement, 1559 to 1563, a compromise designed to unify the nation. Through the Act of Uniformity, all churches were required to use the Book of Common Prayer, originally written by Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. This book, written in English, allowed for prayers and liturgies that felt familiar to Catholics but were shaped by Protestant theology. The 39 Articles of Religion provided doctrinal clarity, affirming salvation by grace through faith, Ephesians 2, 8-9, while retaining the historic offices of bishops and priests. Elizabeth's Via Media, middle way, made the Church of England unique. It was not Roman Catholic, nor was it fully Protestant like Geneva under John Calvin. Instead, it retained ancient tradition, liturgy, sacraments, apostolic succession, while also embracing Protestant doctrines. This blend gave Anglicanism its distinctive character, a church both ancient and reformed. One fascinating detail is that Elizabeth demanded outward conformity in worship but allowed private belief. This meant Catholics could attend Anglican services to avoid fines while secretly maintaining Catholic faith at home. In a sense, she enforced unity without enforcing uniformity of conscience. This settlement saved England from further civil war. By finding a balance between Rome and Reform, Elizabeth gave birth to Anglicanism as a distinct tradition, rooted in both scripture and tradition. Like Paul's call for unity in Ephesians 4, 3-6, her settlement sought peace in a divided land. As England grew into a global empire, the Anglican Church traveled with it. Chaplains, missionaries, and settlers planted Anglican churches across North America, Africa, Asia, and Australia. The Book of Common Prayer was carried aboard ships, shaping worship from London to Lagos. Just as Paul carried the gospel across the Mediterranean, Acts 13:47, Anglicans carried their liturgy to the ends of the earth. In North America, Anglicanism took root, but soon faced independence struggles. After the American Revolution, 1776, Anglicans in the US could no longer swear allegiance to the British Crown. Out of this crisis, the Episcopal Church was born in 1789, keeping Anglican worship but free from political ties to England. Interestingly, its first bishops were consecrated in Scotland, since English law at the time forbade consecration without swearing loyalty to the king. In Africa, Anglicanism spread rapidly, especially through missionary societies like the Church Missionary Society. By the 19th century, Converts in Nigeria, Uganda, and Kenya were embracing the faith, often blending Anglican worship with local traditions. Some of these communities became more theologically conservative than the Church of England itself, quoting passages like Jude 1:3 to contend for the faith once delivered to the saints. Lesser known is the story of Samuel Ajayi Crowther, a former Nigerian slave who became the first African Anglican bishop in 1864. His work translating the Bible into Yoruba and other languages was crucial in spreading Christianity in West Africa. He showed that Anglicanism was not just a colonial import, but could be truly indigenous. By the 19th century, Anglicanism had transformed from a national church into a global communion. Each region developed its own identity, yet all remained tied to Canterbury. The Anglican Church was no longer just England's church. It was becoming a worldwide fellowship. In the modern era, the Anglican Church has faced new and divisive challenges. Questions about women's ordination, LGBTQ+ inclusion, and biblical authority have fractured parts of the communion. Some provinces, particularly in Africa, hold firmly to traditional interpretations of Scripture, citing verses like Leviticus 18:22 and Romans 1:26-27. Others, especially in the West, have embraced more progressive stances, emphasizing love and inclusion. Galatians 3:28. This tension has led to schisms within the Anglican communion. In the US, for example, conservative Anglicans broke away from the Episcopal Church to form the Anglican Church in North America, ACNA, in 2009. Similar rifts exist in Canada and the UK. Despite these fractures, Anglicans worldwide still claim a shared heritage of Scripture, tradition, and the Book of Common Prayer. At the same time, Anglicanism has continued to grow in the global South. In fact, most Anglicans today are found not in England, but in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Nigeria alone has over 20 million Anglicans, many of whom see themselves as guardians of Orthodox Christianity. This shift in numbers has given African provinces increasing influence in global Anglican debates. One lesser-known fact is that Anglicanism has inspired movements outside its own communion. John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, was an Anglican priest. His revivalist movement drew on Anglican liturgy, but emphasized personal holiness and evangelism, leading to a whole new denomination. Today, Anglicanism remains the third largest Christian tradition worldwide, with over 85 million members. Its struggle between tradition and reform continues, reflecting its birth as a compromise. Like Jacob wrestling with God in Genesis 32-28, Anglicanism still wrestles with its identity. Catholic yet Protestant, ancient yet evolving, divided yet united.